Welcome back to Unsolved Mysteries, JonBenet's Web Truths. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. In last week's episode, we exposed the actual truth about a supposed suspect primarily brought to the forefront by the YouTube ArmChair Detective channel and his frequent guest, Melinda Kula. That is a man she calls Bill Ramsey, who is supposedly John Ramsey's illegitimate son, fathered with a Philippine prostitute while he was stationed there. However, as seen in my previous video, we uncovered that Bill Ramsey, actually named William Lawrence Roan, was born in 1958. 10 years before John was stationed in the Philippines in 1968, and that his actual parents were William B. and Nancy K. Harding Roan of New York. Therefore, no relation to John Ramsey and his family, which you would think would be the end of the discussion regarding him and his accusers. However, on tonight's episode, I feel it necessary to address Melinda Kula and this supposed armchair detective once again, as I take issue with a number of their other claims, 5 to be specific, starting with the least harmful and egregious, all the way to the most sickening and despicable claim. But getting right into it, we go straight to Melinda Kula and her recent interview with A.D., in which she tells us,
Bill Ramsey is a Marlboro brand cigarette butt chain smoker. What was found at the leg of JonBenet Ramsey's swing set in her backyard was a pile of Marlboro cigarette butts. A pile. All they had to do was grab them cigarette butts, check the DNA, compare it to what was found on that child, JonBenet, in multiple places. They would have at least then known the person who left the pile of Marlboro cigarette butts at the swing set leg in the backyard of JonBenet is the same person that left the DNA on her body.
Now, while I may not argue with her that William Roan was a Marlboro cigarette chain smoker, I am not quite certain how she knows they were Marlboro brand, as I've never seen the brand confirmed. And although that is not really a big deal, I do take issue with the claim that these cigarette butts were found at the leg of JonBenet's swing set, because within my files of publicly available records is this 1998 Colorado Bureau of Investigation's laboratory report, which I must point out has the offense listed as homicide, willful kill, family, and has John and Patsy Ramsey marked down as suspects. But looking further down the page, we find a list of items that were tested by the CBI. Of particular interest is the final listing. Number 446, debris, includes 19 cigarette butts, marked A through S. Turning the page, and going to the second paragraph down, we read, presumptive serological analysis indicated the presence of amylase, an enzyme found in high concentration in saliva, in the following exhibits. Number 17, her nightgown. Number 18, a comforter. 20, a sheet. 173, a blanket. And number 446C, one of the cigarette butts. Speaking of butts, we find ourselves back on the JonBenet Reddit page, on a thread titled All But Certain, discussing a wrongfully convicted man that was later cleared because of a cigarette butt, and one of my favorite Reddit posters, MMay333, posts. Interesting, as cigarette butts were found outside the Ramsey house and collected into evidence the first day. This CBI report, the one we just saw, states one was positive for amylase. She continues, unfortunately, I don't believe any further testing was done on them, which is likely. She says, also, I should add that the same brand of cigarette butts were also found at the Amy attack 9 months later. Wonder if those were Marlboros. But she concludes, lots of similarities in that case, and both girls performed publicly and attended the same dance studio. However, I personally do not believe that the two are connected. But getting back to where I believe the cigarette butts were actually found, we find ourselves at Poster Searching Girl's Search and Blog webpage, where she is discussing another supposed potential suspect named Bob Enyart, who is an extremely outspoken pastor and pro-life organizer, although I personally do not believe he had anything to do with this crime. But towards the bottom of the page, Searching Girl states, Bob was a heavy cigarette smoker. The Ramseys' neighbor reported someone was trespassing in their backyard shed and leaving cigarette butts. And that is exactly where I believe the cigarette butts actually came from. Not from JonBenet's swing set that was right out in the open in their yard. Once again, not really a big deal where exactly the butts were found, but it is just the first of multiple inconsistencies Melinda provides. Moving on to our second claim of Melinda's that I take issue with, she states,
She had 3 separate stun guns markings on her body.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, the side of her face, the small of her back, and behind her leg.
Which is quite interesting, as I had never heard of the behind-the-leg stun gun marks before. But let's see if perhaps she is saying this to fit some kind of narrative of hers, as she continues by stating,
Bill Ramsey used practice before his trip. Before his trip, that's premeditated murder. He practiced the use of a taser stun gun on Scott Razor, aka Tom Yubagi, you know, the first karate school? Mm-hmm. That man had a Doberman Pinscher. Bill Ramsey bragged about using his stun gun on that Doberman. And when people were yelling at him from the second karate school, why would you do that to an animal? Innocent animal? Why would you torture them that way? He said, I just wanted to know how many times it would take to lay the dog down. It took 3 times. JonBenet.
3.
JonBenet was hit 3 times with a taser stun gun.
Which is an interesting tale. However, as you will see, it doesn't quite fit, regardless of how she tries to make the evidence fit her narrative, as she tried to do with the coroner Dr. Meyer's autopsy report from December 27th of 1996, which if Melinda had actually read, she would see that on page 4 it actually states, on the posterior aspect of the left lower leg, almost in the midline, approximately 4 inches above the level of the heel, are 2 small scratch-like abrasions which are dried and rust-colored. They measure 1/16 by less than 1/16 of an inch, and 1/8 by less than 1/16 of an inch, respectively. But apparently the fact that these were just minuscule, irrelevant scratch-like abrasions did not stop Melinda from trying to correlate them to stun gun marks. Whereas you will see in this JonBenet documentary snippet, she is the only person in the world that I know of claiming this, as every other documentary states,
there are reported to be rectangular marks on her body, here and here, that match the prongs on a stun gun.
So Melinda's second false claim I take issue with tries to give JonBenet additional stun gun marks. I imagine just to try to help fit her narrative of Bill Ramsey and the dog, which is really kind of sickening. But it is her third false claim that I take issue with, where your stomach really starts to turn. When she is discussing John Ramsey's first daughter from his first marriage, and Melinda says,
Elizabeth Ramsey died in a very suspicious car accident between the Christmas-New Year holiday years earlier, only a few years earlier.
1992 to be specific, and I'm not sure what was so suspicious about it. But let me point out exactly when she said it was.
Between the Christmas-New Year holiday.
Okay, so let's keep that in mind as we continue. While Melinda tries to spin her narrative, she states,
the game called chicken is exactly what happened to Elizabeth. There were no witnesses. It's a one-car accident.
So according to her, Elizabeth died because of a game of chicken gone wrong, which of course, according to her, is one of her suspect's favorite games to play. But she also claims it was a one-car accident with no witnesses. And then, as you will see, she tries to equate the 2 deaths together as such.
That being said, Christmas-New Year holiday, Elizabeth and her boyfriend are dead in a one-car accident. Then, a few years later, JonBenet, second child of John Ramsey, different marriage, is dead in a very cruel, sadistic way during the same New Year Christmas holiday. I don't believe in coincidences, ladies and gentlemen, and I believe that you are all smart enough to see something is very wrong here.
And I believe you are all smart enough to see something is very wrong here. Because if we turn to the findagrave.com webpage for Elizabeth Pash Beth Ramsey, we can see that she actually died on January 8th, 1992, not between the Christmas and New Year holiday. And while we are here, let me point out that Elizabeth was actually born in the Philippines, while John, 24 at the time, was stationed there in 1969. But moving down the page, we easily debunk Melinda's claims that Elizabeth died in a single car accident with no witnesses. When you read, Elizabeth Pash Ramsey, JonBenet's half-sister, preceded her in death. Elizabeth was the daughter of Lucinda Lou Pash and John Ramsey. Elizabeth was an airline stewardess, for Delta, although they do not mention it. But she and her boyfriend Matthew Darrington, 22 also, died when his BMW collided with a bakery truck near Chicago during bad weather. They conclude Darrington was driving. The other driver was not cited, and Elizabeth Ramsey died of massive internal injuries, which is a horribly devastating loss for the Ramseys and the world at large, as just like JonBenet, she was well on her way to amazing things, and was taken from this world way too soon. And Melinda Kula wants to drag her into all this shit. So much for rest in peace. Not cool. Speaking of chitlings, Melinda serves up a whole crock of it. So get your boots on for my fourth false claim of Melinda's that I have issue with. And that is while speaking of JonBenet, she says,
But she also said something very interesting to the gardener Christmas morning. The family was doing whatever they do, Mom and Dad, and getting things ready, and Burke sleeping or going through his presents. But JonBenet stepped outside in the yard. The gardener was there, young gardener, maybe 21 years old or so, as I recall. He saw that she was crying. This is Christmas morning. What children cry on Christmas morning? But she was, and so he tried to comfort her. John, I don't know if he called her Johnny B or JonBenet, but why are you crying? What's wrong? And she said, I wish my father was here more often.
Now there is a grain of truth to this story, but 90% of what she just said is total BS, as we will learn from this romper.com webpage with an article titled, What is Brian Scott Doing Now? The Ramsey Family Gardener is Speaking Up, written September 18th, 2006 by Akenza Moeller, in which they state, Scott also brought up JonBenet Ramsey, JonBenet's father, when speaking to Schiller, the author of the book Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, relaying a story in which JonBenet cried over her father's absence. The article continues, According to Scott, JonBenet said John, her father, would disappear for long periods of time, that she didn't know where he went, and that she missed him. Which a lot of kids feel that way. But they continue, Scott told Schiller, I don't know what to say, didn't know enough about the situation, didn't want to intrude or play counselor, it wasn't my place. I changed the subject and started to rake up leaves. So there was a semi-awkward story of JonBenet crying to the gardener that she missed her daddy. But he was the CEO of a billion-dollar business, and no major red flags go up for me hearing this part of the tale. But this is where I take issue with Melinda's retelling of the story. As this states, Scott relayed a story in which he and JonBenet played with raked leaves, which is about a rather sweet encounter between JonBenet and the gardener. But they continue. That was probably the last time I spoke to JonBenet, Scott told Schiller. 6 weeks later, I took the morning paper from my front steps and I saw it. I don't even remember now what the headline said. So much for Melinda's claims of all this going down on Christmas Day. Why does she lie about things like this? Is she just trying to sensationalize her story? I'm not really sure, but we have made it to my fifth and final false claim of Melinda Kula's that I take issue with. And this one I find to be the most disgusting, despicable reconfiguration of the truth made by her to fit her narrative. And that is while referencing the conversations had between the gardener and JonBenet, she says.
But then she said something that no child understands. She said, why does love hurt?
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
Why does love hurt?
Why does love hurt? The real question for Melinda is why do lies hurt? And this one really should put A.D. and Melinda Kula's credibility in the red. Because as you will see from the opening pages of the book, Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, they took a beautiful story of encounters between JonBenet and the gardener that actually bring me to tears in how sweet and innocent JonBenet was. And they transformed it into some sick, twisted tale that they can try to correlate to JonBenet having experienced prior abuse. Absolutely disgusting. Because the actual question that JonBenet asked was, do roses know their thorns can hurt? Which does rhyme with, why does love hurt? And I would say there's a pretty big difference in the two questions. But I guess the truth was not good enough for Melinda's fanciful tales. Plus, how could she claim prior annual abuse of JonBenet by her non-existent brother Bill Ramsey without stoking the false claims of prior abuse with this doozy of a lie? Why does love hurt? Such BS. But enough about Melinda and her crap, and let's hear the true, sweet, sincere story that author Lawrence Schiller actually wrote, starting with, do roses know their thorns can hurt? JonBenet asked me that one morning. Scott recalls, I was the landscaper at the Ramseys' home during the last 2 years of her life. and it was the kind of question I had learned to expect from her. I remember how intelligent JonBenet was. That's why I never talked to her as if she were just a little kid. I spoke to her pretty much as I would an adult, the way I'm talking to you now. We would discuss evolution, the natural mutations that occur in plants, animals, even people. So when she asked me about thorns, I told her, "They're a rose's shield. They allow roses to survive. They keep away animals who might eat them." Which I think was a beautifully sweet story of an encounter between JonBenet and her friend. I just wish that back then, and even to this day, that JonBenet could have had metaphorical thorns as such, that could have and would still shield and protect her from the animals that continue to attack her and her family, who at least in this video appear to be Melinda Kula and this supposed armchair detective, whom up until this point I have not discussed very much, as in most of his videos featuring Melinda he just agrees with whatever she says. However, he did go out on a limb in his last video with her when he says,
"Melinda is one of the most intelligent women I've ever met. She has put this together meticulously, and you should listen to every word she's saying."
Which is apparently exactly what he did, as just 2 days later, on December 28th of 2021, AD further promotes Melinda's BS claims on his own in this Elizabeth Ramsey video, in which the armchair detective, Alan Vinicombe, anyway, AD falsely declares
Bill Ramsey is John Ramsey's son, by Elizabeth's son, by, I think it's a Far Eastern lady, where he was stationed when he was in the Navy. That son followed him back to America, and we believe has been blackmailing him ever since at Christmas. Now, Melinda is an eyewitness to this because she used to go with her children to karate school.
Oh crap, we lost him. I think he got distracted by a squirrel or something. Seems to happen quite a bit to poor old senile AD. But a while later, he finds his way back on topic and concludes,
2 of his daughters were killed at Christmas. He used to go home at Christmas to collect his money. What more do you want? Okay.
Well, actual evidence that Bill Ramsey was John's illegitimate son would have been nice. However, that is impossible, as we have already determined. But such shabby investigatory skills are shocking coming from someone of such credentials, as Alan Vinicombe once claimed.
I was an MI5 agent, special agent. That's my only, I know I'm not an armchair detective, but I was an agent for MI5. Really, I was. True.
Really? Because you later claimed you were just joking. However, I couldn't find the punchline presented after you said that. And you say impersonating a solicitor or lawyer is a major crime in your country. I wonder if stolen valor is a thing over there, because we take those things pretty serious on this side of the pond. But that is just one of many lies and misconceptions AD has passed over the years. And now it appears he is just an old con, as just this week he released his latest scam, the episode you won't want to miss, touting supposedly exclusive unseen footage of Shanann Watts that he claims will blow the lid off this closed case. But make sure to join his Patreon, otherwise, as the wonderful Truth Justice channel points out, his scam won't work. So AD puts his scam in effect by releasing his supposed bombshell footage, and Truth Justice follows right behind, pointing out, Armchair Detective lies to new subs, shows old footage that everyone has seen for a while. But for the extra special price of $5 on Wednesday and $10 on Friday, AD doubles down and releases not only 1, but 2 more videos of his supposed never-before-seen footage. And another amazing channel, Genetic Code, calls it out, saying, "Been there, done that," followed up by an episode titled Armchair Detective's End of Month Patreon Scam, while Truth Justice comes back in with AD and his fraud push for patrons. And the creme de la creme, TBT2 channel, or Truth Be Told channel, coming out to say not only has everyone already seen this footage, but AD himself has shown it over 2 years earlier. And although he is a bit popular with a lot of the older ladies, no offense, it is because of these deceptions and lies that in addition to the aforementioned channels, he has been the cause of many opposition channels, including this lovely grumpy granny. this aptly named ArmChair defective, and the Sacks on Earth channel, who's pumped out a lot of good stuff, pun intended. But then we get to the ever so lovely Tasha Michelle, who on a side note has gotten herself in the middle of some silly infighting between two other posters who neither are worth naming in my opinion, but have a strange friendship in spite of their opposing views on the Chris Watts case. But I do respect Tasha's stance regarding friends being friends with whomever they want despite opposing views. And although I felt she had no real reason to put out an apology video regarding it, I am glad that she did, that she is moving away from this BS side drama and will try to keep her attention back on the greater cause. Which in her case is to continue to stand up for the Rusick's family, Shannon Watts' family, and to expose Alan Vinicombe, aka the ArmChair detective, for the crooked, lying, despicable person he is. Because once again, just like he did with the Ramsey family, his current scam is to take a beautifully sweet, innocent memory of a victim's life and to try to turn it into some BS evidence to fit his sick, twisted narrative. This time he tries to victim blame poor Shanann Watts by using a video of her father and children making a beautiful memory jumping on a trampoline to claim that Shanann was controlling or something because one of the kids was not jumping. Absolute BS. And AD and his followers should once again be ashamed of themselves. But circling back to AD and JonBenet, to conclude this episode, I would like to feature a short clip of something he said to Melinda Kula a couple of years ago. He said,
"You've got a case, you've got a case, you've got a proper case, a legitimate case, and you based it on fact, you see. They don't like that. When you base it on fact, they have to discredit you because they can't say you're wrong, so they have to discredit you. So they have to discredit me as well now because I'm on your side."
And to that I say, the fact is Melinda's facts have been proven wrong now, which I would think would discredit her. And if Melinda's theory is discredited, and AD was fully promoting it too, wouldn't that discredit him also? But if he has not been fully discredited by now, we will have to just add this to the dozens and dozens of other videos that have been released that have clearly already proven AD a fraud. And while I would love to continue exploring Alan and his new con with the Watts case, please go check out some of the other channels I have mentioned in this episode and hit their subscription button. Not AD's, of course. But for now, I will conclude this episode of JonBenet's Web Truths. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. And make sure to tune in for next week's episode of JonBenet's Web Truths, where surprisingly enough, we revisit the supposed Bill Ramsey guy one more time, and raise a question that I never saw coming. And that is there more to the story of William L. Roan, aka Bill Ramsey? And you might very well be shocked at the answers I have to that question next week. I sure was. So we'll see you on the next episode, because you won't want to miss this. But to see my full video debunking Bill Ramsey as John's son, click on the upper left. To subscribe and get to my full channel, click on the logo on the upper right. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.